Even in an exhibition, Paige Bueckers reminded UConn fans, with her at the helm, anything is possible. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I want to take a moment to share some quick news. We have had some fantastic guests like Emily Adams, insightful new co-hosts like Dan Meehan, and some great interviews with Eric Ryba and others to come. October last month was a huge month for us at Locked On UConn. Our community is growing fast, and it's all about the listeners like you. Special shout out to my everydayers. And finally, here's something that we're really excited about. We love our two kind of projects that we work on as an NIL donor to Bleeding Blue for Good. This podcast gives 10% of its revenue to Bleeding Blue for Good, and also another 10% of the revenue starting with last month's haul will be going to Husky Ticket Project. That means every follow, download, and subscription helps support UConn athletes and sends kids in underserved areas to experience the excitement of UConn basketball and football. We're super excited about that. So if you're enjoying that content here, please take a second to subscribe, follow wherever you listen to your audio. Together, we're building something special and helping make a real difference for Husky fans everywhere. Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start this season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $100, $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, let's begin with yesterday's early afternoon exhibition, scrimmage, whatever you want to call it, with Fort Hays State. Paige Bueckers, once again, shows why she is the top player in college basketball. Playing 27 minutes, she scored 27 points, and remarkably was 12 of 14 from the floor. On the live stream, I said 12 of 18. That would be a fantastic day, but an elite day, like a day that's phenomenal. 12 of 14. She started 8 for 8. She was dominant, hitting her first 8 shots, and gave UConn an early lead and kind of established herself going forward as really the anchor of this team's offense, not unsurprisingly, right? Beyond her scoring, though, Bueckers was everywhere on the floor, grabbing 9 rebounds, dishing out 5 assists, showcasing her role as a primary playmaker for the UConn Huskies and their unquestioned leader. Her presence lifted the team. Even in an exhibition, you could definitely tell there were some jitters with folks like Geno Elfie, even with Sarah Strong. But you could tell Paige really kind of sets the standard for what UConn needs to succeed this season and really kind of shows the way. The starters were Paige, Ashlynn Shade, Caitlin Chen, Sarah Strong, and Ice Brady. I think Coach relied probably a little too much on Paige, but it's kind of like his MO. We've talked about this with Emily Adams about how sometimes his philosophy has always been that the best players are always going to play. I know that sounds really simplistic and probably one of the reasons why he has 11 national championships. But in this case, when you have a team that's had this much injury history and almost has felt snake bitten over the last 4 years in particular in Paige's tenure, that you kind of have to find answers elsewhere and kind of see what your team is made of. And I felt like you can see it right from the start that even though Paige has helped this year, Sarah Strong, Ashlynn Shade played great. We're going to talk about her in a little bit. That the reliance on Paige could end up being, I hate to say it, our downfall this year. Or it could be the opposite of that. Listen, I've said this 1,000 times, and I'm going to say it again. If I make a prediction or an inference and it's not a positive one, I'm always happy to be wrong. I'm not one of these people who want to, I will never stick to one narrative. I will never stick to that. So if I think that Paige's use is being overly used, so to speak, and it comes to find out we're sitting here April 8th or whatever the national title game is, and they're hoisting that trophy and she's playing 40 minutes a game constantly, I will be completely quiet, because I think some of that is overblown once you get to tournament time. But this is the time when you're playing Fort Hays State or when we play BU later in the week. 27 minutes is not a ton, but I'm talking about the usage on the court. Like her stress level was not very high because it's not a very good team. But it's one of those things where when you rely on the one player over and over again, it becomes like that in higher pressure, higher leverage situations. So that's just something to think about. I think Ashlynn Shade showed a confidence that we hadn't seen in a while, and I think it's mostly that kind of freshman to sophomore leap. Ashlynn was great last year, but I'm talking about just the aura. I wasn't there, but just kind of like watching the game and seeing how she took charge to kind of take the ball to the basket sometimes, not just a standstill shooter, but kind of pulling up. She had 15 points on 6 for 11 shooting, very efficient in my estimation. She really showed her ability on both the perimeter and on fast breaks. Defensively, I thought she was fantastic. I thought she showed great skills and instincts to, I think she had a few deflections. I don't necessarily have her steals on this, but I think she actually, yes, we did. She led the team with 4 steals and really often initiated some of that UConn transition game with her aggressive defense. So that was a highlight of the game for me, is like, I really wanted to talk about Ashlynn in that respect. But one of my favorite sequences of the entire game was the ball movement. I think it was in the third quarter where Paige delivered a no-look pass, behind the back pass to Sarah, who kind of faked a shot, initiated a pass to, I believe, I forget who it was on the wing. It might have been Caitlin. And then everyone kind of gave a little head fake and then kicked it to an open Ashlynn Shade in the corner, who hit a 3. And it was just beautiful. And I think you can find it on all over Twitter. It showed a little bit of team chemistry that is high level for an exhibition game. And I mean, also it kind of felt like they're picking on a little sister, where it's like, oh, just kidding, I'm going to pass it over here. But that's part of it. You get a team in conflict, and then on top of that, then they're, getting out to the ball and rushing to see if they can get a hand up and contest, and then you kick it to an open teammate. Really love that sequence, but I think that's something that is going to only build over time. And despite Paige's incredible performance, Geno noted that the team obviously has a lot of areas to work on. They struggled with turnovers early. I thought some of the entry passes need to get cleaned up. I thought Caitlin, as a seasoned graduate of playing 4 years at Princeton, I thought some of her entry passes to Jana or to Ice were pretty poor, to be honest with you, and they got knocked away. Forcing it, but that also could be jitters of playing for UConn. Because look, people pointed this out that Caitlin's been playing and she's had great games against big time competition, and don't say that because she was playing against a Division II school that she was nervous and all this other stuff. She most certainly was. She most certainly was nervous playing that game, because it's not Princeton anymore. You're playing against a pretty much sold out Gampel Pavilion on a Sunday, and in Connecticut, the basketball capital of the world, where they unveiled these beautiful new video boards, and there's more pressure. There is no more pressure anywhere in college basketball on the women's side than playing for Geno Auriemma and the UConn Huskies. The standard is championship or it's a failure, unfortunately. And I think it's very kind of Yankee-esque, and I know that's going to piss off some Red Sox fans in New England, which even as a Yankee fan, I've never been a fan of. Like, you know what I mean? Like, sure, do I think everyone's goal is to win a championship, whether you're playing professional sports or otherwise? But the journey to get there, you kind of have to kind of see what happens, because just because we're UConn doesn't mean that we're guaranteed a title. With Paige at the helm, we're definitely in the mix, and I think we're going to likely get there, because I think we're going to get some more reinforcements, obviously. But I think Caitlin's a key. So if I'm tough on her this year, it's because I think she shows those flashes of brilliance, driving aggressively to the rim. She had 14 points on 6 for 11 shooting. But finding that right balance between scoring and facilitating will be key for her, especially with when Paige is off the floor. So, but let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about Ashlynn and Sarah's impact in this game. I really thought that they played a nice game and was excited for today, Monday, November 4th, when I'm recording this at 10 o'clock. It's college basketball season now. It's here, and it feels like Christmas. So let's talk about that and other things coming up after this. How hype are you for college basketball season? It's like Christmas come early. Both the UConn men's and women's teams tip off their season at Gampel this Wednesday and Thursday. It's going to be spectacular. I don't know about you, but I'm counting down the minutes. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate fan isn't just a hobby. It's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to get through those games, whatever you're doing before, after, and those nail-biting potential overtime minutes. Although with these two games, I doubt it. That's why they created Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, just for super fans like us. You know, the ones who are first in the lot and the last to leave. We see you. This week, my UConn Fan Fuel came from watching Paige Bueckers dominate in that exhibition game, going 8 for 8 to start, finishing 12 of 14. That court energy was electrifying, and it's only the beginning. So whatever you're prepping for the big game or ironing your favorite Paige Bueckers jersey, let the Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot keep you going strong. Sarah strong. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. And we're back on Locked On UConn. The start of the college basketball season's got me hype. No, this is not a 5 Hour Energy promo again, but it's the truth. I mean, I'm so excited. And I'll tell you one other thing that made me super excited. It was the emergence of Sarah Strong in that exhibition game. I thought there was, although people may have higher expectations for her on what she's going to do, I think she made an immediate impact, showing that she is the top recruit in the country and that it was well-deserved. She played 28 minutes, putting up 11 points, leading the team in rebounds with 8. She's just physically stronger than most of the women out there. And I think that's some of the thing that is so indicative with her last name. But also, I mean, it's ironic, but I also think that is something that you don't see a lot of when someone transitions from high school to college, and on either the women's or the men's side, which is they're already kind of like a physical presence. You know, like the term men among boys, women amongst girls. Like she felt like a women amongst girls against Fort Hays State. Will that continue that trend as the season goes on? I think so. I mean, when you look at her, she doesn't look like someone that will back down to a fight. And I think that is what her strength is going to be, her physicality, but also her IQ is just so advanced at this age. She made some great passes that I think sometimes people don't even really. I think there was one pass to Ice that would have been a layup where Ice was like, oh shoot, like I didn't think that Sarah was going to pass me that. So I think there's going to be an opportunity for them to have a nice high-low game where Sarah, who is a good shooter, and Ice, made a 3. Let's not go crazy about how good of a shooter she is. Sarah is a plus shooter, where people are going to have to come out on her, and if they do, it creates lanes to pass in that high-low from the high post. Having a wing, or that's potentially Sarah with a post presence ability too, that is going to be out by the 3-point line as well, draws some of the bigs that are probably going to have to guard her because of her physicality. You can't put a guard on Sarah. If they put a guard on Sarah, it's over. She'll take them to the hole and bully them to the basket. So I think that's the biggest thing. I think her shooting efficiency will get better. She was 5 for 13. So whatever, that will leave some room for improvement. But I think her willingness to take shots really kind of shows what Geno was talking about saying, hey, Sarah's role on this team is a blank canvas. She's going to paint her picture however she wants. And I think that's a really great aspect of Geno's mentoring and coaching is, look, you came here to be a great. We can help you get there, but you have to kind of show us a little bit from the start. And I felt like that confidence to shoot, 5 or 13, doesn't really care. I think Geno noted that Strong hesitated on a few looks, but as she finds her comfort zone, she's going to be a really consistent scoring threat for them. And that's going to be huge. It's going to take a burden off a Paige that I think is incredibly needed. And then another person, again, I don't think Ashlynn Shade gets enough credit for what she's going to bring to this team. I I think she has the ability to be a better playmaker going to the basket than people give her credit for. I think there was even one time where the announcer thought it was Caitlin Shen going to the hoop, but it was Ashlynn. And it was on a transition where she kind of took some contact, made a little leaner off the window on probably a running 6-footer or something like that. But that's a part of her game that I think is going to only continue to get better. I think she's a consistent knockdown shooter. That's going to be there for her. But I think the leveling up of her game is, I think she's going to end up being likely an all-time great in stores, because she does everything, and she's got this moxie that I love about her game, where she doesn't really give a rip about anything other than making winning plays. So I think that's going to be something that I'm super excited about coming up against BU. Back to Sarah, I think her passing skills are so evident, particularly in the way she finds Paige for open shots. She's got great court awareness. They both do, both Sarah and Ashlynn. But Sarah has this ability to read defenses that just makes her elite, that is going to make her a valuable playmaker. I think Geno mentioned that she is a playmaker for herself and others. And I think that's a quote from him that really highlights, what it'll end up being like once Sarah is, going on 100%, not worried about being a freshman, not worried about, first time with everybody on the floor, kind of in official capacity. I think that is going to be really key for this season. So her versatility, Ashlynn's emergence, throw in a little bit of Ice Brady, being the muscle down low. And I think this team is really kind of on its way. I wasn't disappointed with anybody. I just want to say that before what I'm about to say next. The idea that I got a lot of heat in some circles that because I said that Jana, we haven't seen a lot of Jana, so I really don't know much about her game other than highlights, right? Because she hasn't played at UConn. Watching her yesterday, I can see why people are excited about her, but I can also see why there's cautious optimism, because she's true to form of what Geno said in the offseason. Jana is trying to make every play a big play. And what we need from her from the start is the simple play. Catch the ball, establish position, pivot, get to the basket for a shot. If they double you, kick it out. Keep the ball up high. If there's one thing I noticed from her and also from Ice is that when they get the ball, they drop their hands so that little guards can come in and rake at their hands and basically strip the ball. And that happened numerous times. Tie-ups, sloppy play, that kind of thing. That kind of thing needs to be cleared up, where you're a big, you get the ball up here, and you can kind of survey the floor. And if they don't double you, work your post moves. I know Jana has that, and I also knows she can shoot. So turn and face the basket and hit a jumper. I just think that there's some things that need to be cleaned up from a footwork perspective, from a mentality perspective, that especially when you play shorter teams, which is they're going to play a lot of in the Big East, which are going to play against Boston University coming up on Thursday. Shorter teams are going to come at you because they're going to collapse. The defense is going to collapse, and they're going to want you to either kick it out or strip it from you. So I think that was my only kind of negative, is like from on the inside presence, is just cleaning up some of the sloppy play and also some of the entry passes to get them that opportunity. So when we return, let's talk about how the defense of this team can and will be a strength this season as we go into the college basketball season. I am super pumped. Again, college basketball season is here. Let's talk about some more actual games coming up after this. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel.com, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. All right, you're back on Locked On UConn. Last segment of the program, we talked about Paige's emergence, maybe overusing her in an exhibition game is kind of a sign of things to come. How Ashlynn Shade played a great game and really kind of asserted a little dominance in her playing. Also, what I loved about the game that I really didn't talk about on the live show was, again, the defensive aspects of this. But even before we get into that, it's college basketball season, and I have to say something that I whether it's the women's game or the men's game, don't you wish the first game of the year wasn't a bye game, that it had like some excitement? Because let's face it, like college football does this. They play like Alabama plays Texas, or there's a non-conference game that is just the best game of the night or the best game on schedule. I wish one or two teams would start this kind of and do it, whether it's UConn, South Carolina, or you go back to an old foe like UConn, Tennessee, and you rotate where it's played. Maybe this year it's in Knoxville, and the following year it's in Stores, something like that, where it kicks off the women's basketball season as kind of like an event that you can't miss it. And even though I love college basketball, women's and men's equally, I just would want that, because both of these games, whether the women are playing BU, the men are playing Sacred Heart, it's nice. It's a nice opening game. But if you lose the opener against Tennessee or South Carolina, or you win it, it's not going to affect the rest of the season. You're still going to be a top team. You're still going to go on and play in the NCAA tournament and play tougher opponents and all that stuff. But just would be a really cool kind of culmination of the beginning of the year. Just my thoughts. I know some people are going to hate it and think that's crazy, but back to the game and some of the things that I think that stood out. UConn's offense showed some really great potential. I think Allie Ziebell was 2 of 10 from 3. Keep shooting, girl. Like you're a legit shooter, and shoot. I love that. She was that aggressive. That's another thing. The defensive intensity that stood out in an exhibition game was phenomenal. Ashlynn had 4 steals, testament to her growth as a defensive player. She was aggressive in the passing lanes, a trait that Geno has emphasized last season. It was clear that she's taken that to heart. Her ability to disrupt plays really allowed UConn to get out in transition, where they were able to score easily against Fort Hays State's unsettled defense. Shade's development as a two-way player will be crucial, and I think she is going to be a phenomenal player for UConn and Geno Auriemma as time goes on for the entirety of her career here. Jenna Elfie, who we talked about, showcased her potential as the defensive anchor, pulling down 9 rebounds and blocking 2 shots. That's something that's underrated. Everyone wants to talk about her. Can she put up 20 points a game? Don't worry about that. We got plenty of scoring. Can she play defense? Can she rebound? She can. While she only scored 4 points, she got in some foul trouble early. I think that's an issue that we can talk about. But I do think she picked up a couple cheapies that aren't going to be called in a normal game. I think there was probably a little like, we feel sorry for you mentality to Fort Hays States from the refs. And I don't think that you're going to get that in a regular season game. But managing fouls will be critical for her development. UConn's needs her size and rebounding ability to keep control of the paint. I think that's going to be the absolute key for the season for Gianna, is stay on the floor, be a rebounder, be a contributor. You don't have to be a primary scorer. So turnovers and fouls, maybe some primary areas of concern, considering you're playing a D2 school that you committed 12 turnovers leading to 15 points from Fort Hays State's. That's not ideal. UConn only went to the free throw line twice, also not ideal against a smaller and weaker opponent, while Fort Hays attempted 13 free throws. Again, I think that was a little skewed. Maybe the whistle was going a little bit the opposite direction, because you're going to lose by about 40. Let's make sure it's not by 80 like South Carolina did to their opponent the other day. I think Geno emphasized the need for a smarter play, meaning don't foul, use your feet, don't use your hands. Having a bigger presence in the paint, not just relying on perimeter shots. I think that's going to be something that's a point of emphasis as they play BU. So BU, I'm sorry, you're about to get a thrashing. And nearly half of UConn's attempts coming from beyond the arc. I think I'm okay with that, because they have shooters and shooters shoot. But I feel like there has to be a concerted effort to get to the hoop so that you can get some free buckets, get some free throws, that kind of thing. the path forward really is, despite these areas improvements, UConn showcased a really impressive level of depth and versatility, whether it's Bueckers, Shade, Strong, Ice Brady, each brought something unique to the floor. Caitlin Shen's scoring ability adds a valuable dimension to the backcourt. Off the bench, Qadence provided a scoring boost, demonstrating her ability to stretch the floor. Her willingness to shoot from deep adds another threat that defenses will have to account for. Similarly, as we talked about with Allie, she was less efficient from beyond the arc, but showed that she's not afraid to take big shots, which I love. And listen, if you're a freshman and you shot 10 threes in a game, that means they have a lot of confidence in that you can make at least 5 of those. So 2 today, but 2 yesterday, but not a big deal. Qadence had 10 points. Ziebell had 8 points in limited minutes, and they really do have a much deeper team outside of that starting 5. No KK Arnold, no AZ Fudd, obviously, and so these are Ayanna's in a sling, but they think she's going to be ready next week. There's depth here. It's not the same as it was last year, as a few people contended on the live stream. They continue to fine-tune the rotations. I think this depth will enable them to maintain intensity throughout the game. But I think when they find their 7, 8, 9 person rotation, that's going to be the key, is like that chemistry of those, maybe 9. I don't think they're going to go 10 deep, but I think the exhibition really showed UConn's strengths and areas for growth. The strengths are the ability to shoot the rock. You have Paige Bueckers and nobody else does. The emergence of Ashlynn. I feel like the eventual emergence of Sarah Strong on being a dynamite player, both on the offensive side and defensive side. I think you can point to defensively Ashlynn Shade becoming this phenomenal two-way player this season. I think those are the things that you can take away. And I think on the negative side, Geno needs to slow down. I think defensively, this team played well, but they should probably foul a little less, right? Get to the basket a little more. Let's get to the free throw line. But a lot of room for improvement. UConn's fans should feel this team's potential, with Paige setting that standard and Ashlynn emerging as a defensive leader. And I think there's going to be a nice little emergence of Sarah Strong and Ice Brady forming a promising front court partnership, little high-low action, because they both can shoot it a little bit. So defenses are going to have to come out. It's going to open up spacing and driving lanes, even for if they're not playing high-low, even on kickouts to Paige to get to the basket and others. There's a lot of work to be done, but this exhibition game can start a foundation of what could be a deep and dynamic team that's ready to compete at the highest level. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto. Wishing you all the best this week in this beginning of college basketball. I hope all of the college basketball dreams come true for the UConn women this year, but it's the start of the season, and there's a long way to go. Ask you to stay. We're asking you to stay locked on to us. Stay connected to all of the UConn content you can get. Follow Emily Adams in the Hartford Courant, and wherever you get content, whether it's Connecticut Insider, my friend Jared Kotler, who does Connecticut Scoreboard podcast, do it all. But remember, it's not just about getting it done. It's about doing it in a way that can't be done any better. That's our goal every day here at Locked On UConn, and it's the goal of the UConn Huskies. Thank you, Geno, for letting me co-opt that. As always, go Huskies.